We shall commence this module by discussing the role of government in social economic sphere in brief. The role of government in the social economic sphere has evolved considerably over a period of time. As societies develop and become complex, heterogeneous and specialized, the necessity for agreements or contract rules becomes bigger. Therefore, the governments across countries have assumed greater significance. The growing complexities and problems associated with the market failure necessitate the need for government intervention in economic activities through direct and indirect channels, such as through the direct provision of certain goods and services, regulation of industries and trade through various rules and regulations. Post the World War II period, the government was regarded as vital for the provision of goods and services and for the establishment of rules and institutions that would allow efficient market functioning and ensure sustainable social and economic development. The expansion in government spending was driven by post-war confidence in government and a gradual move towards the mixed economy system in many of the industrial countries. In underdeveloped and developing countries, the process of social and economic development required an effective government rule that could play a catalytic role, encouraging and complementing the activities of the market, and at the same time act as a provider of key social and economic goods and services. The success of a mixed economic system requires effective coordination between the government and the market forces. The role of the government is no longer static. Global integration of economies, technological changes, problem of poverty, unemployment and climate changes, etc. have necessitated the need for an effective government intervention program that undertake and promote collective actions efficiently. Next, we will discuss the role of the government under conditions of competition and cooperation. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the role performed by the government in an economy and understand the role of government under conditions of competition and cooperation. Let us now discuss the role of government in detail. Prior to the First World War, the role of the government was limited to activities such as the maintenance of law and order, ensuring internal and external security, and the provision of important public goods. The Great Depression of 1930 laid the foundation for the participatory role of the government in the economic activities in terms of promoting aggregate demand and ensuring a high rate of employment. It was seen as a failure of the markets, and there was growing popularity for the Keynesian demand management tools. Since then, governments across countries have been an instrumental force in promoting economic development and securing economies from economic vulnerabilities. They are increasingly involved in almost every aspect of the economy, such as administrating prices, financial markets, regulations, and other social economic areas. The recent international economic downturn and the subsequent government intervention programs for uplifting the economies from the downturn are the prime example in this regard. The size of the government spending has increased many-fold since the subprime crisis of 2008 due to the government intervention in financial markets and economic stimulus program to push the economies out of the crisis. There are some important features that highlight the role of government in an economy. Firstly, the simultaneous existence of public and private sector and the effective coordination between the two. Secondly, allocation of resources through the price mechanism and government directives. Next is protection of consumers' choice and their sovereignty. Next is the arrangement of definite economic planning for the public sector enterprises. Then we have government intervention and regulation of profits of the private sector, promotion and ensuring social welfare of the citizens, implementation of effective fiscal policy and monetary policy conducive to economic development, and encouragement of technological progress to promote efficiency in the economy. Musgrave in 1959 classified the functions performed by the governments into three categories: allocation of resources, redistribution of income, and stabilization of economic activity. Another important role that can be added is promotion of growth and employment. The government is involved in the allocation of resources through the provision of public and merit goods such as defense, health, and education. The degree of government intervention is determined by the level of achievement in all these tasks and by the nature of externalities. Under the distribution function, the government undertakes activities that ensure equity and efficiency. The market activities often promote inadequate distribution of income, and thus government intervenes through its taxation and subsidy programs to correct the market failure. The stabilization branch is concerned with programs that aim to ensure economic stability conditions like full employment, stable prices, and a desirable macroeconomic environment. In short, the government activities fall into a number of categories. First is production of goods and services. The government is responsible for the production of certain goods and services such as roads, ports, and items of national defense. It also undertakes production activities along with the private firms such as electricity generation. In India, at the rural level, the government is responsible for the provision of services such as health and education at reasonable prices. Next function is purchase of goods and services. The government also purchases goods and services from the market meant for further production or for subsidized distribution. For example, the government procures food grains from the market and sells them among the poor at rationed prices. In another example, the government procures goods to provide for national defense. Next function is regulation and subsidization of private production. An important aim of the government is to curb monopolistic tendencies of market players and ensure reasonable prices of goods and services. It aims to correct the market failure associated with externalities and public goods. The regulations also aim to protect the interests of the consumers, workers, and the environment. Thus, the government regulates the activities of private organizations through regulatory measures such as quotas, taxes, and other such measures. For example, a carbon tax is imposed on factors that emit greenhouse gases. It also collects taxes and that alters economic behavior. For instance, taxes on labor influence the incentives to work, while taxes on specific goods such as diesel influence the production and consumption decisions. Next function is redistribution of income. Equity is an important objective to maximize social welfare. The markets are often criticized for promoting unequal distribution of income, and thus government intervenes to solve the problem of inequality and to raise the standard of living. The government redistributes income through modes of taxation and subsidy to achieve objectives of equity and efficiency. Moreover, redistribution policies gain more importance in developing countries given their problem of unemployment, poverty, and inequitable pattern of income distribution. Developing and underdeveloped countries redistributing income programs tend to require more resources and higher government intervention. These governments tend to spend more on public services such as education, health, and bureaucracy, leading to a bigger taxation and subsidy program in order to support the so-called welfare state. Another important role played by the government in a mixed economy system is to provide a legal framework within which all economic transactions between firms and individuals can take place. It also allows the government to regulate an industry. The two areas where such operating standard is particularly important are regulations of goods produced under increasing returns to scale and control of externalities. Moreover, well-established legal and regulatory framework help in reducing market costs, thereby improving efficiency and market operations. Economic activities would be severely restricted in the absence of well-defined property rights, as individuals would have little incentive to accumulate assets. Apart from defining property rights, the government also enforces contracts and agreements between individuals. Further, we will discuss the role of government through creation of cooperative and competitive environment for achievement of its social economic objectives. The right mix of cooperative and competitive forces is an essential requirement of efficient allocation of scarce resources and for smooth and stable operation of government and market agencies. The justification for the government intervention lies in the problem associated with the operations of the market. Considering a hypothetical situation of a free market economy where an economy is perfectly competitive and individuals have perfect information. Under such a case, the equilibrium situation will be Pareto efficient, that is, no one can be made better off without someone else being worse off. Individuals maximize their respective objective functions, and thus government intervention is not considered necessary for the achievement of efficient outcomes. The need for government intervention in this situation arises from the fact that Pareto efficiency does not ensure equitable distribution. The patterns of income distribution depend upon a number of factors such as ownership of assets and financial resources, the propensity to save, skill level, demographic factors, and risk-taking behavior of individuals, and so on. The consequent distribution may or may not match the society's acceptable level of inequality. Thus, out of the concern of equity, poverty and unemployment, the government is expected to intervene in the social economic sphere. The government, through redistribution policies, can achieve the twin objectives of equity and efficiency. Moreover, the economy may not be perfectly competitive. The government regulates the activities of firms and keeps monopolistic tendencies of the firms under check. There are industries such as electricity where firms enjoy increasing returns to scale in the initial stages of production. Such firms tend to capture a significant portion of the market by creating artificial barriers to entry and restricting output to raise prices. If businesses become monopolies, the benefits of competition are lost, and the resource allocation under such situations is generally not Pareto efficient. The need for the government to enforce competition arises because markets do not behave efficiently in the presence of imperfect competition or in absence of essential information with the market participants. Laws and regulations create an environment within which fair and competitive markets can exist, and that can guide the activities of firms and individuals to achieve desired ends. With growing globalization and development of societies, the need for regulatory institutions has increased tremendously. Government intervention in a mixed economy can be illustrated by taking a number of examples. First, we can take the case of the input market, where through anti-discrimination laws, wage legislations, laws related to bargaining, government can intervene. In the output market, government may intervene through direct provision of certain goods and services, that is, public and merit goods, purchase of goods and services, consumer protection laws, tariffs, subsidies, and quotas on domestic and international trade. In the business sector, government may intervene through public utility regulations, monopolistic restrictions, corporate income taxes, etc. In the household sector, government may intervene through inheritance laws, personal income taxes, transfer payments, and welfare schemes, etc. Changing and evolving social views and rapidly changing technologies exert significant influence on the role of government. The government has a greater responsibility of promoting the welfare of all the individuals comprising the society. It plays its role through the set of rules, laws, and institutions that regulate the economy. The process of development requires markets to grow, which in turn depends upon the capabilities and effectiveness of government institutions. Let us understand the ways in which the government affects the decision-making process and the economic activities of various economic agents in the society. First, we will talk about regulation. Market exchange requires formal contracts, and this in turn requires a regulatory institution to register and enforce them. As discussed earlier, the effective regulation can foster competition and innovation, and at the same time can curb the monopolistic tendencies. A well-established regulatory framework is an essential requirement for protection of consumers, workers, and environmental rights. Moreover, it can help to alter market outcomes conducive for achieving public ends. The government, through regulation, protects and benefits the society at large or some subclass of it. It has a power to potentially threat or help a vast number of industries. The task of regulation is to explain the form of regulation, decide who will receive the burden or benefits, and what will be the impact of regulation. Effective regulation is instrumental in fostering growth. For example, due to regulatory reforms in Chile during 1980s, the telecommunication industry attracted sustained private investment, improved competition and service quality, and declining prices. Whereas, as a result of dysfunctional regulatory framework, the Philippine telecommunication industry lost on investment, led to high prices, and imposed a high cost on the society. The need for formal institution also arises to protect the property accumulated by individuals and to establish property rights. Well-established property rights are essential for the process of economic growth and poverty reduction. The effectiveness of property rights depends upon three conditions: fair and stable judiciary, efficient law and order framework, and protection from unpredictable government actions. The unpredictable judiciary, crime and corruption have been found as a major constraint for business activities. The government protects the interests of the market and the public through the establishment of competition and consumer laws. Competition laws prevent the abuse of monopoly power in the hands in dominant firms and guide the market outcome through ensuring enough competition in the markets. It aims to ensure a level playing field for all the market participants. Consumer laws are established to protect the interest of the consumers from probable exploitation by firms and to take care of changing consumer behaviors. Apart from them, the government assumes the responsibility of bridging the information and coordination gaps faced by the markets in the form of asymmetric information and moral hazard problems. Well-functioning government institutions can significantly reduce the cost associated with such problems. The government plays a leading role in setting the incentive structure for the economic agents to induce them to innovate, to improve productivity, and to allocate resources efficiently. The process of market development critically depends upon the effectiveness and reliability of institutions such as security of property rights and enforcement of contracts. The government ensures that rules are enforced consistently and are not changed unpredictably. The credibility of government institutions has a significant influence on the business environment and on the outcome of development projects. A fair and predictable judicial system can make the process of complex transactions easier. In the absence of a well-developed judicial system, firms tend to use other ways of enforcing and monitoring contracts. Next, we can talk about industrial policy. The government, especially in underdeveloped and developing countries, can encourage industrial development by reducing coordination problems and gaps in information. An effective industrial policy can secure social, economic, and institutional fundamentals necessary for economic growth. The industrialized countries used various mechanisms to spur up their growth process. Developing countries need well sought out industrial and trade policy to face growth challenges. The Indian government announced a package of various measures to spur up the Indian economy through the industrial policy of 1991. The aim was to correct distortions of the industrial sector. The industrial policy sought to liberate the industries through the abolition of licensing system, gradually opening up the economy and reducing the role of public sector. The government also enhanced its support to the small scale industries and took measures to increase the competitiveness of the industries. The success of industrial policy also depends upon the administrative and institutional capabilities of the government machineries. Dysfunctional and ill thought out industrial and trade policy can cost countries dearly in terms of adverse micro and macroeconomic environment. Next is managing privatization. The government can enhance the growth of markets by inviting private initiative in areas where government enterprises are not performing efficiently. The term privatization refers to the process of transfer of ownership of publicly owned assets to entities that intend to utilize them with the aim of profit maximization. Privatization provides a solution to the problems of ill-performing public sector that drain out national resources. In India, the government has actively pursued the process of privatization to reform the public sector enterprises and to enhance industry competitiveness. Countries such as China, Taiwan, where government chose to allow private sector development along with public sector, witnessed positive economic benefits in terms of improved revenues, productivity and efficiency gains, beneficial structural changes and sustainable competitive advantage. Next is securing social and economic fundamentals. The government plays an important role in complementing the markets in ensuring the institutional foundations for market development. There are 5 fundamental tasks before the government to ensure sustainable social economic development. These are ensuring macroeconomic stability, protecting the vulnerable, protecting environment, investment in social overheads, and establishing a firm legal and regulatory foundation. Weak government institutions are a hindrance to provide sector growth, squander government credibility, and hurt the social and economic welfare. Sustainable economic development requires a high priority to social fundamentals. A state of lawlessness, high levels of crime, violence, and poor judiciary are often an indication of marginalization of some section of the society. Here, only government can ensure that the fruits of growth are equally shared and adequate protection is provided to the citizens from social economic insecurities. The underdeveloped and developing countries face the lack of private investment in social overhead capital, and as a result, the process of economic development is held up in the early stages. The task of development of social and economic infrastructure lies in the hands of government, and provision of them creates external economies for the development of market institutions. They can even call for private sector participation and thus coordinate to create conducive environment climate in such areas. Another area where government intervention is sought is environmental regulation. The growing concern of climate change and environment pollution has led to increasing government regulation in the form of pollution taxes and other levies to regulate markets. Yet another aspect of government role is ensuring economic security to its citizens. It is deeply important for developing countries facing problems of poverty, unemployment, and income inequality. The market operations are often criticized for causing economic vulnerabilities and aggregating economic problems of the marginalized section. The government through its redistributed policies and host of other measures, can efficiently protect the interest of such sections in the society. The tremendous growth of China and the East Asian nations during the last 3 decades is a prime example of government economic policies that support economic growth. Their success stories are an example of how coordination between the private and the public sector can bring beneficial results for an economy. There are 3 sets of policies that are instrumental in the growth process: ensuring the macroeconomic stability, liberal trade and investment policies, and avoiding price distortions. As discussed, these policies help an economy to benefit from competitive forces and provide the right incentives and signals for economic agents. The stable inflation rate, stable balance of payment position, and more open outlook towards international trade and investment are key to the process of sound economic progress. A right mix of fiscal and monetary policies, along with effective investment in social overheads and considerable investment in people, are the important ingredients of an effective government intervention program. Strong government institutions are essential requirements for promoting competition or even efficient coordination between the market agents, as such governments can act as brokers of information and facilitators of mutual learning and collaboration, and thereby play a market enhancing role in support of economic development. Government intervention in a market economy is required to improve microeconomic efficiency by correcting a market failure. The functions performed by government can be classified into 4 categories: allocation of resources, redistribution of income, stabilization of economic activity, and promotion of growth and employment. The government plays an important role in the process of market development through various measures such as regulation, distribution, purchase of goods and services, industrial policy, privatization, redistribution, setting up of legal framework, and securing social and economic fundamentals. The reliability and the capability of the government institutions determine the extent to which the above measures can successfully help the process of social economic development.